Hello, and welcome to VTuber 101 History. This is where we'll be covering off the history of VTubing, where it came from, where it is, why we know what VTubing has become and probably will become, as well as a few other neat things that you can learn along the way to help better prepare yourself as a VTuber. Now, just to set your expectations, I'm not a AAA streamer and I don't claim to know absolutely everything about VTubing. This video is just to give you a brief overview of the history of VTubing, like I've said before, and the reason it's brief is because there is a lot to go over. In fact, if I were to be more encyclopedic with this video, it would be, well, the string, I should say, it would be a much longer video. We're talking like in the realms of Lord of the Rings for VHS levels of long, I should say. Now, if that's something that you're into, if that's something that you want to see, do let me know. I'll take notes, and if I reach affiliate, I'll probably end up doing a much longer variant of this as something for a sort of a celebration type stream. But to help us, or help me, anchor my thoughts and commentary more accurately, I'll be anchoring my this entire presentation, or at least this section of it, around these 3 points. What is VTubing? Why is VTubing? And where did it come from? So, to start off VTubing as a whole, we need to go back to 1935, South Korea. Now, around this time is when the Georgie Sisters formed, and they're widely regarded as the first girl band in Korea. This in itself isn't super relevant, but what it did is that it did kick off the idol scene in Korea, which led to these bands here. Now, these bands are pretty much the result of years and years of, rules, standards, ways of performing, ways of styling, pretty much, distilling into what you see here. Now, more specific to VTubing, we're going to take a couple steps back and focus on 1960 Japan. Now, around this time, which is 30 years after the creation of the idol scene in South Korea, Japan, obviously being a very close neighbor, was paying attention to them and decided that they were going to do their own spin on it with their own, cultural takes on what is and what isn't an appropriate thing to do. And as a result of that, it's synthesized into these VTubers here. Again, some of these you've probably heard of, some of them probably haven't, but they're the distillation of several years of progress and development of this industry as it sits, or did sit at the time that they were performing. Now, you might be asking, how do you get into one of these idol groups? How does that even happen? Well, there are a couple ways you can go about it. You can do what's called a group interview, which is the easiest way to understand a group interview is that it's a variation of America's Got Talent. So if you've ever seen that, it's you show up, you perform, and you try to show that you yourself are of worth to be considered for a group that a agency is running, because that's who you're performing to, an agency. But if that's not something that you want to do, you can instead do a video interview, which is that very much the same thing, where you are doing a very one-sided performance, you're presenting yourself as a potential candidate, and then you're pushing that video out to the agency responsible for the group that you want to apply for. Another way that you can do it is you can do what's called a one-on-one interview. Much the same as any other job interview, it's just less of a performance, less of a video, but again, they're still trying to get a gauge for who you are and if you can fit in the group that the agency you're applying to is managing. Now, another way that you can get in, and this is more specific to what's called Akibara idols, or street idols, or underground idols, whichever you want to call them. You could be walking across Japan, you could get approached by a talent scout. Now, their job is go around Japan, look at people from a distance, and make a guess on whether or whether not they would be successful in a group that agency is responsible for. Now, in any situation, this is roughly what your what to expect when you approach one of these groups. You'll be an idol in a group of idols. You'll perform on stage, act in movies, or do TV commercials or shows, dance, or even model. More specific to when you are performing on stage, you'll interact with your fans, and you'll do signed posters, you'll take photographs with them, all that sort of stuff. And that as an idol is when you'll make your money, unless of course you're doing movies or TV deals, in which case there is a different arrangement with how you'll get paid. But in any case, once that cycle is over, you'll then repeat that however many times a week or a day or a month or a year that your agency contracts you out for. Now, as for the style, it does vary from agency to agency and group to group, but the two general rules are girls will have more of a cute style to them, while boys will have more of a, cool aesthetic to them. But, like any other industry, there are a lot of hazards involved. The work-life balance isn't really great. In fact, it's quite common for an agency to completely take over someone's life to the point where they're not even allowed to have a relationship with another person, because that could destroy the image that they're trying to play as an idol. Because one of the common things that happens when you apply to an agency is you will not be playing as yourself, you'll be playing as a character assigned to you assigned to you by that agency that you're applying to. And in that case, anything that you do that is a threat to that image, that will destroy the purity of that image, agencies don't really appreciate, and more often than not, they explicitly state in your contracts that that is not okay, and you will receive a punishment as a result thereof. Now, many idols don't have this as their primary job, unless you're in one of the bigger groups. But typically during the day, they'll be doing a day job, they'll be studying, and then they'll be performing at night. Now, that in itself doesn't sound so bad. The problem is when you run your idol career like that, what you'll end up doing is all of that spare time you had, gone. All of your friends, gone. All of your family connections, your life connections, gone. Pretty much every single inch of spare time will more or less be geared towards you being an idol, eating, or sleeping. And as a result of the stress of your life being taken over to such a high degree, most idols, at least in the underground scene, quit after a year. Now, the exception to this is when I was doing the research for this video, I did see a video of a foreign national in Japan who was approached by a talent scout to be a sorry, just clearing my throat. Approached by a talent scout to be a idol. And as a result of that, again, all of the depression, all the anxiety, she didn't do self-harm, but self-harm in the idol scene is a very common thing that happens to those who are under a lot of stress, and the agencies are aware that that does happen. And yeah, it's not properly dealt with. I'm not going to go any further than that because that's a bit too much even for my taste, but again, that just shows you how high the stress is. And for her, she went through depression as well, and she actually ended up staying 2 years, which according to her fans and her agency and her friends that were, supportive of her up until that point, is extremely unheard of. Anyway, enough with that. You might be asking, why did I bother to go over all of this? This is supposed to be history of VTubers. This is supposed to be discussing, where they come from, all the rest of that. Well, you need to understand is that without the Japanese idol scene, and respectfully, the Korean and Asian idol scenes, we wouldn't have VTubing, at least as we understand it today. And that's because a lot of the standards and a lot of the ways that idols perform and their structure, at least to a point, and this is something I'll clarify later on in the video, it wouldn't have existed unless the inspiration was there as a result of the idol scene in Asia existing. Because VTubing more or less copied their work culture, modified it a little bit, and then tweaked it for online performers. Another thing you need to be aware of is, as a VTuber, especially when you're just starting out, you need to be super, super, super critical of your work-life balance, because if you are running this either professionally or as a hobby, you need to be aware that there is going to be a significant portion of your life dedicated to supporting the infrastructure behind this hobby, making it so that your brand gets out there, making it so that everything is done so this runs as smoothly and as efficiently for you. And if you don't strike that balance between doing this and your day job and resting, and by resting I mean stepping away from VTubing, decompressing, making it so that you don't have this take up all of your spare time, you will suffer burnout, and burnout isn't good. So I pretty much made this section of the series because you don't want to be this guy where everything's fine and then it just gets worse and worse and worse. So to learn for the future, you know, we're going to study yesterday, because yesterday is when all the mistakes were made, and we don't want yesterday to be today. Now, I want you to pay attention to this group, this flow here of life as an idol, because it's going to come up later, but it is going to be drastically changed. And those who know, comment in the comments if you know why. Those who don't, just pay attention. But, you know, it's a little bit of like a fun tee-hee ha-ha. I want to see if you can guess how that's going to change. And if you think you got it, put it in the comments below. But enough of that, it's weeb time. For those who don't know, this anime is a really obscure anime called Excel Saga. I wish I still had the copy of it that I had from my friend, but, you know, unfortunately that was lost due to time. Now, just a little bit non-specific to weeb culture, we're going to go back to 2004. Around this time, Yamaha released Vocaloid, and if you don't know what that is, all you really need to understand is that it's effectively an advanced version of text-to-speech. 2004 isn't really what we're interested in. We need to go a couple years after that and go to 2007, which is when version 2 was released. Now, Krypton Media came across Vocaloid at that time, and they were also aware that, you know, anime was still popular, especially in the both local to Japan and, you know, the surrounding, you know, islands, as well as, you know, the Western world, and they saw a potential to make some money off of this program. So what they did is they created Hatsune Miku. Now, Hatsune Miku itself is the name of a voice bank or sound bank that they made for Vocaloid. Now, this isn't the first virtual idol to be used for advertising the product, but, you know, it is still quite interesting. Now, we all know Hatsune Miku. Those who don't know that, she's performed a couple of songs. You've probably seen this image somewhere before. But the success of Hatsune Miku, if she were a real person, or if it were a real person, we'll just say she to make things simple. If she were a real person, her approximate net worth, depending on what source you go to, is around $120.28 million US. Jesus Christ. Now, also what's relevant to us as VTubers is all of her dancing, or at least the vast majority of it, and her performances were done in a program called Miku Miku Dance. Now, what she did, and this isn't the first time that it's happened, is she further cemented the idea that an idol could be anchored to a character and not a person, which turned the standards of the Asian idol scene on its head. And that's, again, this isn't the first time it's happened, but, you know, it's happened so many times up until this point that it more or less put one of the final nails in the coffin of the idea that you had to be, like, a VTuber. You had to, oh, hang on, that's not aligned correctly. That you had to be a real person of a certain aesthetic to be a VTuber. You could just be a virtual mask and have it where that is your presentation. Well, she was this program was one of the first people who broke the mask so to speak. Again, not the first instance, but one of the major ones that broke the mask, or broke the mold of what it meant to be an idol. And another thing specific to VTubing as a culture is all, and I mean all of her animation, or at least the vast majority of it. Hang on. This isn't aligning correctly. What are you doing, OBS? Here. All of her animation was done in Miku Miku Dance. And that's going to become important because of this company called Activate. Now, Activate was one of many companies at the time, back in 2016, who were trying to develop and break into the Twitch scene at the time, which, as it stood, was very oversaturated with people who were streaming games on Twitch, as well as other types of content as well. And because a lot of people were on there, you know, just streaming games with a face cam pointing to them, the market pretty much became oversaturated. And it became very, very difficult, but not impossible, to stand out as a streamer. But Activate also knew that anime was still popular at the time, and with the amount of series being released and being picked up, especially in the Western world and both locally to Japan, they saw potential to combine the two. And what they eventually came up with was Kizuna AI. Now, Kizuna AI was... This is a bit of debate, because Kizuna AI was very technically not the first VTuber. Like, as per the definition of VTubing as we understand it, that title actually goes to someone in Britain. However, she was the first person who officially coined the term, so because of that, she is regarded as being the first VTuber as we understand it. Now, a lot of what she did that pioneered at least the very early methods of being a VTuber on Twitch was she utilized Miku Miku Dance and H5. If you don't know what that is, at the time, back in 2006, it was very early motion capture for PC. So it's the type of hardware that people used in the early days of VR chat and things like that. And it took an entire team behind her just to support that and allow it to run at all in any description. Now, she did a lot of the stuff that Hatsune Miku did. She sang, she performed, and what allowed her to stand out, at least in her target market, was she was a cute idol that played video games. Another thing that she did that allowed her to stand out and provide the foundations for everyone in VTubing thereafter her was she took this workflow, which had existed in the Asian idol scene for years and years and years and years and years. And then she threw it out. Instead, what she did is she came up with this workflow here. So when you're an idol in Asia, a lot of your work process was you performed on stage, you interacted with fans, which is mostly where you got paid, and then you repeated that however many times you were contractually obliged to. What she did is she took all of the standards of the idol scene, the styling, the performing, etc., and changed the workflow from you're an idol performing, which is either you're playing video games, singing, dancing, etc., but you're also interacting with fans at the same time. You then take the recording of that, upload it to YouTube to interact with more fans, and then you repeat that cycle. And the process of uploading that interaction up into YouTube allowed her to passively grow her audience over time, which is a huge part of what led to her success. Now, this process was picked up by a whole bunch of other agencies. So, HoloLive, Ninja Sanji, Virtual Talent Academy, and everyone else here pretty much asked this question, what if we do exactly what Kizuna AI was doing, but we do it better? So they did, and no company here does everything the same way, but in their own rights they have been tremendously successful. Now, as for how you get into one of these agencies, unfortunately, there's not a lot known about that because not a lot has been confirmed about VTuber agencies and how they run, in the same way that we know how agencies in Asia run their talents. What we have confirmed is some talents are voice actors that applied to these companies, others got scouted by agencies, but again, there is no quote-unquote common way to get in. But one thing to remember is even though you see a lot of success from these agencies and their talents and what they've done pre and post Kizuna AI, you don't actually need to be a part of an agency to be a VTuber or to be successful at all. Because remember, we said earlier on in the presentation, or if I haven't, I'll say it now, success is relative to the individuals and the goals that they've set for themselves. And if your goals don't require you to be part of an agency, you don't have to do that. But, again, and it is always an option if that's something you want to consider. Now, one of the popular talents that we'll mention, which is arguably the reason why VShojo exists at all, is Project Melody. Now, I bring up Project Melody because VShojo did something quite unique to VTubing agencies as we typically understand them, because up until this point, VTuber agencies ran the same way that talent agencies in Japan ran their idols, whether it was a Akibara idol or a more mainstream idol group. They did very much the same thing, where it was pretty much you are tied to the agency, you are playing this character in this box, and anything that's a threat to that character is not allowed. Project Melody, however, is a very unique individual where she came from doing spicy content, and her chat more or less bullied her into playing games on Twitch, and as a result of that, she got picked up by Gunrun and was one of the initial members of the VShojo talent group. And what VShojo did is they didn't give her a character. They didn't say you have to be in this box. They didn't say you have to play XYZ. They just said, look, we like the voodoo that you do. We want to continue doing that within our agency. Instead of changing who you are, however, we're just going to let you operate as is. Obviously, there are some general guidelines, and we're just going to support you with technical support, product marketing, and getting your name out there. That is it. And as a result of that, we've seen many different levels of success from that agency who pretty much, again, broke the mold and allowed people to be truly independent while being contracted to a company. Now, what she does is she very rarely plays video games, but, it is something that she does. And she also collabs with other VTubers and runs her own podcast called The Lucast. If you've not seen that, watch it, because I can't adequately explain what that is other than a very spicy, shambolic, interview-esque style show. And another thing that I want you to do is to just take pause to read this, because whether you're starting out or you're already in VTubing, this is something that's interesting to read, because this is something that she did as a response to a question when she was being interviewed by Crunchyroll. So read this, take it in. It is super, super important for you to read and understand, because it makes you aware of just a whole different level of perspective when it comes to being a VTuber, and on Twitch or on YouTube or on whatever platform that you are trying to exist on. Okay, with that being said, we're going to progress on. So, next person we're going to look at is Takahata 101. Now, he's an example of someone who has a very unique set of skills, I want to say. He got all of his talent as a performer from Team 4-Star, and he only really made the jump into VTubing in about late 2020. Now, what he's known for, what he's by and large known for, and it's not the only thing he does, but the one thing he does, at least 80% of the time, is he runs a show called The Weary 101, which is pretty much a slow roast of a talk show where he collabs with other VTubers, he shoots the shit for about a couple hours, and everyone just has a good time. And one of the things he does is he takes all of the skills that he learned for Team 4-Star, playing all of the roles on Hellsinger Bridge, well, most of the roles he did on Hellsinger Bridge, all the roles he played on Dragon Ball Z Bridge, and he distilled that into this caricature that you see in front of him, where here's the bartender who pretty much shoots the shit, and he also plays, video games. He does skits all of the damn time. I've not seen him sing on stream, but if you've ever seen it, I believe it was the last season of Dragon Ball Z Abridged. Phone go ring ding. It was the last season of Dragon Ball Abridged where Perfect Cell was being defeated, that he sang Frank Sinatra's I Did It My Way. And that is a talent that if he wanted to, he probably could perform. And another thing he does, and this is specific to a running gag on his show, is he will turn into a puppy, which is a result of a skit that he did with a person called Kimray, where she pretty much turned him into a puppy and was sort of like a dom sub thing that they have going on. They don't do it so much anymore, but it is one of those things that he sort of has like a love-hate relationship. Another thing that he does that he utilizes all of his voice acting talent for is, you'll see in the image, I'm not sure if you can pick it up, but there is a image of Wide Tucker, which is references a very scuffed model that an artist called Gunrun made for him, where it's pretty much just him, but in widescreen mode, if that makes any sense. Yeah, it's pretty funny to watch all that stuff, and it's just again, all of that stems from the fact that he was this person before a VTuber and just sort of molded that into this caricature that you see in front of you right now. Now, another VTuber that's maybe not as popular, but I think is another example of you don't have to follow the mold to be successful, is someone called Miss Jackie. Now, she has a massive flair for art. Does doodle on stream, but mainly plays console games and very cozy comfort games on stream. And another thing that she did, which I thought was quite interesting, is she developed something for TTS. Now, if you've been on Twitch for any length of time, you've probably seen people donate X amount of bits to have a TTS message spoken out over stream. And Jackie was doing that for a very long while, but in about 2022, she said, well, what if I have a little avatar on stream that acted out as though it was saying the TTS messages rather than the TTS messages just playing from the void? So she came up with this little cat creature that she calls Chat Cat. She pretty much released it as sort of I don't think this is going to work, but I think it would be quite funny. And Chat more or less adopted it immediately. As a result of that, they've developed their own law, their own way of saying, okay, if you are going to send something over TTS, this is how you say it, this is the sort of rules that you follow, and it's all unspoken. But as a result of that understanding between everyone in the community and Jackie, they've sort of been able to have it where they can be a part of the stream rather than just being a bystander. And I think that's a very good example of someone who has thought outside the box and innovated to be who they are as a streamer while also being successful as a result of that decision. Another streamer that I think is quite interesting is Ironmouse. Now, I bring up Ironmouse more as a closer to this section of the video because she's another very unique example of someone who was streaming well before VShojo existed. And pretty much existed because, well, at least as a VTuber, because she has what's called immunodeficiency disorder, which means that she has pretty much zero immune system. So her ability to make friends and to interact with people IRL is excruciatingly difficult for her, as well as every other thing that she does throughout her day is also very, very hard. But she saw VTubing as potential to reach out to people in the community, get to know them, and as a result, even though she struggles every single day, she has both grown personally and creatively and has met thousands of new people and has grown a very significant following. Both of her talents, because she plays video games, she collabs with other VTubers, and very, 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 very rarely, and this is more as a result of her health conditions, she will sing on stream. Now, the uniqueness of that is she is a very talented singer. Unfortunately, her singing the way that she does to the level that she does it puts massive strain on her body, so she has to be very, very careful about when she streams, how long she sings for, what she does sing when she does. But you know, if you're ever part of her stream and she says she's going to sing, do stick around, because it is an absolute treat and a half to listen to. And she is actually one of the people who resulted in me trying to be a streamer at all, because as a laborer, as someone who works with their hands, I identify with struggle to achieve a goal, and that in itself was an inspiration. But what really pushed me over the edge was there was an outro that she did where she mentioned all of her issues and all the stuff that she came up with, and she said, well, if I can go through all of this, anyone can do this. And that was sort of, for me personally, the straw that broke the camel's back. Now, just one thing that I would like to bring up is, you're probably asking, well, do I need to be a member of an agency? And also, obviously the answer is no. To be a VTuber at least. Do I need to do everything else that everyone's doing? No. Do I need to play video games at all? No. In fact, if you spend any amount of time going on Twitch and you search VTuber and come up with the results, you'll see there is a non-zero number of people who actually very rarely, if at all, do what everyone else does. You have people who play video games, or people who just sing, or do art, or make models for people. You have people who do overlays. There is no one thing you have to do to entertain people. It's, again, the obvious stipulation is you have to do everything through, you know, the mask of a virtual avatar. But so long as you have a talent or a skill that you're passionate about, you can be a VTuber. It is possible. Again, just one thing that I would like to impress upon you is do your research, figure out where the potholes in VTubing is, both what can cause you stress, what can kick you, what can take the rug out from under your feet, different ways that you can, different ideas for content that you can do based on what you've seen here and what you probably research in your own time, and try to put together an action plan as to how you can promote your talent out there, again, through the mask of a virtual avatar. And there is a very, very real chance that you can find success. It is difficult, it is not easy, but what in life is meant to be easy that's truly worth it? So I just want to take this time to thank you for watching this video. It is probably the 10th time I've had to record this, either due to scuffed audio levels or just me being absolutely nervous, but in spite of that, I do think the history of VTubing is something that people should take note of, because it's not talked about widely enough, both where it came from, the issues that still exist in VTubing today, both are as a result of the mistakes that are being made for new talent, as well as the mistakes that are being brought over from the idol scene. into this industry, but also because like there is no one path to success. Just pace yourself, you'll be fine, and everything will be good. And as always, do keep up to date with me. I am on the Twitter, TikToks, Discord, and YouTube, and right here I'm on Twitch. And if you don't know what those links are, you can type in exclamation point links at any time. This will link you through to all of my socials. You can keep up to date on when I'm streaming, what I'm streaming, and who I'm streaming with. In the next installment, we're going to be taking the next step forward from the history of VTubing to more you as a VTuber, what the anatomy of a VTuber is, some things you could need to be aware of when you're setting up and selecting your software and hardware, as well as baby steps you need to consider before making that first step to stream something to either Twitch or YouTube or insert platform here. Thanks for spending your time here, and I do hope to see you on the next stream. Bye for now.